Provincial Department of Examination, Northwestern Province paper. So let's discuss this paper and let's discuss what kind of questions that they asked from you, and let's go through the paper, and it will be a great opportunity for you to grab the important poems that you had already done, and it will be a great revision as well. I think I have sent you the paper for your group. You can go through the paper and you can write your answers as well, and you can compare the answers with the teacher. Right, okay. So we will start. As you know, first and foremost, we have poetry, or else we call questions which are known as context questions, right? Certain context will be taken from your syllabus. It can be a poem, it can be a short story, or else a drama. So certain context will be taken from there, and you will be asked certain questions related to the context, right? So we will go to the first one. This is the first question that they have asked, right? Now whilst the sun rests on mountains, light thy bright torch of love, thy radiant crown, put on and smile upon our evening bed, right? This is a very famous, very popular poem. I hope you know the poem already. This is actually taken from To the Evening Star by William Blake, right? This is the poem To the Evening Star by William Blake. I will discuss the answers with you, right? Before going for the answers, I will give you a small description about the poem as well. Then you will be very much attached, right? I will send you the paper. I think I have sent you the paper. I will forward the paper again. Right, okay. Maridu, I have sent you the paper. Check whether you have received the paper, right? Okay, right. So this poem is actually taken from To the Evening Star by William Blake. So this poem can be taken as an ode. If you can remember, I will revise the things that we have already learned, right? This poem can be taken as an ode. Odes are known as actually addressing poems, right? Odes are known as actually addressing poems. And William Blake actually belonged to the romantic category. He belongs to, he is known as a romantic poet, right? He's known as a romantic poet because most of the poems actually written by him are based on nature. So he's known as a romantic poet. So this poem can be taken as an addressing poem, but this poem is actually not taken as a sonnet because this poem does not have that rhyming scheme, right? That rhyming scheme cannot be seen even though we have 14 lines. This poem is not taken as a sonnet because we don't have that rhyming scheme, right? Basically, in a sonnet, we have to have the rhyming scheme of ABBA, ABBA, CD, CD, or else ABAB, CD, CD, EF, EF, GG, right? But this poem, right, even though we have 14 lines, this poem does not comes under the category of Petrarchian sonnets or Shakespearean sonnets because we don't have that rhyming scheme. As a result of that, we can say this poem belongs to the category of ode. This can be identified as an ode, right? So in red color, I am giving you the most important parts. You can write down. You don't have to write down the question because I have sent you the paper. You can take the paper and you can write the answers. Later, you can write down the answers. I am just giving you a small description, small introduction about the poem. Then you will be very much enthusiastic towards the poem, and it will be a great revision for you guys as well, right? So this poem can be taken as a ode, and here to the evening star is actually known as the goddess Venus. So the entire poem is actually addressed to the goddess Venus, where goddess Venus is actually known as the goddess of love and fertility. So the entire poem is actually addressed to the goddess Venus, right? So in the poem, the poet is actually addressing, at the same time, the poet is addressing the goddess Venus. The poet is actually asking some kind of contribution of the goddess Venus, as well as the beauty of the goddess Venus is also explained in the poem, right? Now, in this particular extract, if you pay your attention very carefully, now whilst the sun rests on the mountains light, the bright torch of love, thy radiant crown, put on and smile upon our evening bed. Right now, here the sun rests. This can be taken as an euphemism, right? This poetic technique is known as euphemism, where you are trying to tell something in a different manner, in a strange manner. That is known as euphemism. This technique is known as euphemism, right? What do you mean by euphemism? Euphemism means that you are trying to emphasize something in a different manner, right? This is known as euphemism, right? In an euphemism, what happens? You are trying to tell something in a different manner using different types of words. Now, what is that word that they use? Sun rest. Rather than telling that sun is, what do you call, setting down, right? Rather than telling sun is setting down, here we can see that the poet has used actually personification, right? Now, normally, as you know, rest is actually taken by patients, right? If you are a patient, if you are suffocating from some kind of illness, the doctor will say that take a rest, right? But we know that sun is actually inanimate, right? But the poet says that sun is taking some kind of a rest. That can be identified as what? That can be identified as euphemism as well as personification, right? So in this line, we can see personification. Personification can be taken as a major technique here, right? Now, while the sun rests, whilst can be taken as archaic language in this poem, you can see that archaic language can be taken as a very powerful poetic technique. In the entire poem, you can see archaic language, right? So whilst means in modern English, while. Now, while the sun rests on the mountains, light thy bright torch of love, right? Light thy bright torch of love. So thy bright torch of love, again, you have thy. Thy can be taken as the archaic language. Bright torch of love can be taken as a very powerful metaphor. So the poet has used here a metaphor as well. This can be taken as a metaphor, right? Where the can be taken as a metaphor. Metaphor can be taken as a direct comparison. Right? It can be taken as a direct comparison. So it is known as a direct comparison, right? It can be taken as a direct comparison where the poet says that the evening star is actually taking a bright, the evening star has a bright torch, and that torch is actually directly compared to love, right? Directly compared to love, right? The bright torch is directly compared to love. So the poet says that evening star is bringing the bright torch of love, right? So the love is actually directly compared to the bright torch. That can be taken as a metaphor, right? Direct comparison, as I have explained to you. Thy radiant crown. Not only that, evening star is a goddess, as I have explained to you. So evening star is having a radiant crown. The evening star is actually wearing a beautiful crown, and the evening star is putting that it smile upon our evening bed. And here also we can see personification. Evening star is actually smiling towards the evening bed. During the evening time, people, after their heavy work, after their hectic work, people are actually inside their rooms with a lot of hard work, with a lot of suffocation. At that time period, what happens? Evening star is actually smiling upon their evening bed. Some kind of sexual feelings are actually aroused by the evening star. So evening star is actually providing some kind of a help to these people in order to arouse those sexual feelings, right? That can be identified as smile upon our evening bed. So this is what the entire line actually, inside this entire line, this is the idea. So in these three lines, we can clearly understand how the poet is actually giving some kind of a beautiful explanation about the evening star or else the goddess Venus, right? If you pay your attention very carefully, here we can see several poetic techniques that can be identified as archaic language, which can be taken as, we call that biblical language as well. Then we have metaphors, very powerful metaphor, bright torch of love. And evening star is actually personified in the entire poem. And here also we can see even the sun is also personified, and euphemisms are used as a very powerful poetic technique in the entire poem. And here also we can see one euphemism as well, right? These are the basic things that you have to understand when it comes to this line, right? There are a lot of things in this poem that we can discuss, but I am not going to discuss entirely because we have other questions to discuss. So these are the basic things that you can remember about this poem. Please make sure to read the poem, one of the most difficult poems in the syllabus because of the language. So you have to pay your attention very carefully, because if you take this poem, each and every line you have a poetic technique. Even in these three lines, as you can see, each and every line we have a poetic technique. At least one poetic technique can be found, right? That is the specialty of this poem. Each and every line, at least you will have one poetic technique, at least, right? In the first one, as you can see, you have archaic language and personification, and you have euphemism. In the second line, you can see bright torch of love, a metaphor. Thy can be identified as archaic language. In the third line, put on, smile upon our evening bed, that can be identified as personification. So as I have explained to you, in this poem is very special, by William Blake, romantic poet, second generation of romantic poets. So make sure to remember, in this poem you have number of poetic techniques if you pay your attention very carefully. Okay, my dear students, let's go to the questions. Name the work in which these lines appear. Name the writer. Who or what is referred to as thy? What is the tone of the speaker? What does the speaker expect from thy according to these lines? So these are the questions that they have asked from us. Let's try to figure out what are the answers that we have given. So if you are going to answer this type of question, my dear students, this is how you are going to answer your questions, right? As you can see here now, these are the answers that we have given. To the Evening Star by William Blake, that can be identified as the poem. Make sure to write the entire name, right? Make sure to write, if you can remember, please make sure to write the entire name of the poet. And please make sure to write the correct name of the poem as well. To the Evening Star by William Blake, you will get 1 mark for that. Then the second question is actually what they have asked is that who or what is referred to as Dai. As you know, as I have explained to you, that can be taken as Venus, goddess Venus, evening star. Dai can be identified as archaic language. Then we have what is the tone of the speaker. The tone of the speaker is respect and admiration. You can see appreciation, because throughout this part, we can see that the poet is actually giving some kind of admiration and we can say some kind of exaggeration, or else we can say appreciation is actually given to the evening star. In the latter part of the poem, we can identify that the poet is actually asking some kind of a service or else contribution rendered by the evening star. But here in these 3 lines, we can clearly mention that the poet is showing some kind of a pure respect towards the evening star, right? That can be identified here. So these are the answers that you can take. This is how you have to write the answers, and make sure to remember that if they are giving 1 mark, if they are giving 2 marks, write accordingly. 1 mark, just try to line 1 or 2 lines. If it is 2 marks, 2 or 3 lines, something like that. Don't write lengthy paragraphs for this kind of context questions. I have seen that most of the students, they have the tendency of writing long answers. Don't do like that, because in context questions, they are asking very simple questions, or else we can say very much aimed or directed questions from the candidate. So as a candidate, you should be very careful when you are writing answers. You should specifically write according to the question that they have asked. Long explanations or huge explanations will not be taken as answers. As an example, if they are giving you 1 mark, don't write 5 to 6 sentences, because that is actually unnecessary and it will definitely waste your time as well. Don't do that type of silly things. Make sure to write only 1 line or 2 lines that you can elaborate your answer quite profoundly, rather than writing 2 to 3 lines or 3 to 4 lines, right? It depends. Now, if you are writing 15 marks question, definitely you can write 2 pages or 2.5 pages. There is no doubt about that. You can explain all the things that you know, right? You can elaborate your answer quite profoundly, right? But here it is not like that. In context questions, you have to exactly write the answer. That is more than enough, right? So we are going to the second question, my dear students. As you can see on the screen, this is the second question that they have asked. He watches from his mountain walls, and like a thunderbolt he falls. This is a very popular poem, the first poem that you have in the syllabus. This can be identified as the Eagle by Alfred Lord Tennyson. So Alfred Lord Tennyson actually belonged to the Victorian category of poets. He actually lived in the Victorian era. Victorian era can be identified as the era of 1830 to 1901, right? 1830 to 1901 can be identified as Victorian era in England, right? 1830 to 1901, right? 1830 to 1901 can be identified as the Victorian era, right? Why it is known as the Victorian era? Because Queen Victoria ruled at that time period. So that is why that is known as the Victorian era. At that time period, who ruled the country? Queen Victoria ruled the country. So what do you call? Alfred Lord Tennyson can be identified as a Victorian poet. So this poem clearly explains about the glamour and beauty of the eagle, as well as if you see the personification that he has used in the poem, we can clearly compare this poem into a human being as well, right? Most of the poets, most of the critics, they have actually compared this poem to a human being, because in this poem entirely he has given some kind of a personification to the poem, to the eagle. As a result of that, most of the critics actually, they comment that this poem can be also identified as some kind of a poem which explains about the life cycle of human beings. But however, these 2 lines, these are the 2 lines that we have selected from the entire poem. And the questions that they have asked, he watches from his mountain walls. I will give a small elaboration about this. He can be identified as personification. Here he is actually taken as the eagle. So it is actually masculine gender, which shows that eagle's power and glamour. He watches from his mountain walls, right? Mountain walls, here mountains are actually taken as walls. That can be taken as a metaphor again. Mountains are actually directly taken as walls, so it can be taken as a metaphor again. What do you mean by a metaphor? Direct comparison, right? Metaphor can be identified as a direct comparison, right? So mountains can be identified as a metaphor. So here we can see personification as a poetic technique. And throughout the poem, we can see that the poet has actually used personification as a very powerful poetic technique in order to explain the idea. So it can be identified as the poem. The entire poem can be identified as a poem which explains about the personification, right? So this is a very simple poem. Even though the poem is very simple, my dear students, don't misunderstand. In the poem, there are a number of places that you have to pay your attention. where sometimes this poem is actually compared to a human being because of this personification. Sometimes the poet, sometimes most of the critics argue that in this poem they explain about the life cycle of human beings, right, from birth to death, right? The life cycle of human beings are discussed, right? That can be also taken as an example. Name the work in which these lines appear, name the writer, who is referred to as he, name a technique in the last line, what is the effect created by this technique, right? So these are the questions that they have asked, not like the previous syllabus. In this new syllabus, basically, you have 4 context questions, right? In the previous syllabus, we only had 3 context questions, but if you are getting ready for your oral level examination this year or next year, make sure to remember that definitely you will have 4 context questions, right? Out of them, definitely the first question will be identification of the text. So if you can remember all the poems and all the poets and their names quite clearly, definitely you can get 1 mark. There is no doubt about that, because you exactly know who is the poet and what is the poem. Can you understand? So that one you have to practice, right? If you by heart all the poets and all the poems, definitely that mark you can take, because each and every context question, the first question will be identification of the poet and the poem, or else what is the literary work and who has done that literary work. That can be identified as the first one. So who is referred to as he, name a technique in the last line, what is the effect created by this technique, right? Okay, right. So we will move on to the answers. I will erase this. Let's try to identify what are the answers that we have taken. Okay, right. These are the answers that you have to write. As you can see here, you have given marks for that. So the marks allocation will be 1 mark, 1 mark, 1 mark, and there will be 2 marks for the last question, right? So altogether you will get 5 marks. First one for the identification, you will get 1 mark. Second one, you will get 1 mark. Third one also 1 mark. And the fourth one, you have to write a small description, but don't write a lengthy paragraph. I'm telling you again and again, if you are getting 2 marks, don't write lengthy paragraphs, right? 2 or 3 lines are more than enough elaborating your answer. So as I have explained to you, I have answered the first question, The Eagle by Alfred Lord Tennyson. He is referred to as the eagle. It can be taken as personification, but they have not asked. You don't have to write. So the third one is actually the direct one that we can see is that simile, right? You can see there is some personification as well, because we have the word he, but you can't write that answer because the fourth answer is actually connected with the third answer. Can you see that? The D answer is actually connected with the C answer. So you cannot write the effect as he, because they are asking what is the effect created by this technique. So using this simile, what happens, it creates both visual and auditory effects. Exactly. Visual and auditory effects. That is something very important that you have to pay your attention, right? Visual and auditory both. Right, sorry for the inconvenience, right? So it creates both visual and auditory effects, showing the swiftness, power, danger, speed, and unique beauty, right? So you don't have to include all these things, but you have to remember what you mean by visual and auditory effects, right? This is something important, right? So which means that visual and auditory imagery. Try to understand, my dear students, there are different types of imageries in literature. First and foremost, you have to remember that basically they are referred to the visual and auditory effects. Now, if you see this quotation, right? If you see this quotation, the last quotation, like a thunderbolt he falls. Like when we use the word thunderbolt, the sound effect is also there. So when you say thunderbolt, you can get the imagination by thinking about the sound effect, right? That is why it is known as auditory imagery. Auditory imagery refers to with the sound effect, you are going to get the imagination, right? That is what we call auditory imagery, right? With the sound effect, right? Using the sound effect, you are going to get the imagination, right? Using the sound effect, that can be taken as auditory imagery. Then you have visual imagery. Visual imagery refers to visual image, or else what you see, things that you see, right? You can create the image, right? Sound effect through the visuals, right? Through the visuals that you see, you can see the effect, or else you can create the imagery, or else imagination. We have tactile imagery, right? We have another one, tactile imagery. You have to remember all these imageries. Tactile means by touch. By touching, you can see that, you can identify that, you can experience that, what kind of thing that you are referring. That is known as tactile imagery. That is known as tactile imagery. Tactile imagery. right? Then, my dear students, we have olfactory imagery, right? Olfactory imagery, olfactory imagery, right? Olfactory imagery, right? Olfactory. We have visual imagery, auditory imagery, tactile imagery, olfactory imagery, right? Olfactory means with the smell, with the fragrance, right? With the fragrance, you can come to you can take the imagination with the fragrance. That is what we call olfactory imagery, right? With the fragrance. Referring to the fragrance, you can refer to that, right? Visual imagery, tactile imagery, olfactory imagery, right? Those are the basic images that you have to remember. Those basic imageries that you have to remember, right? Through these images, what happened? We are creating imaginations, right? So here we have visual and auditory imagery, right? So from that, it creates swiftness, power, danger, and speed. So swiftness of the eagle is actually shown here, right? Swiftness of the eagle, and the power of the eagle is actually shown here. Sometimes the eagle is actually coming so fast in order to catch some prey, some kind of a prey, it can be there. So sometimes it may show the danger as well, right? Because the entire bird is actually taken as a dangerous animal. Where, don't misunderstand this, Alfred Lord Tennyson has not said that eagle is something, the eagle is not actually sensationalized. According to Alfred Lord Tennyson, what he said was eagle can be identified as something terrible, right? Something vicious, right? He did not want to what you call sensationalize the beauty of the eagle, right? He didn't intend to do that. Alfred Lord Tennyson is a Victorian poet, so Victorian poets did not want to show the beauty of the nature. That is actually done by the romantic poets. The beauty of the nature, waterfalls, rivers, birds, right? All these beautiful things are actually explained to us in poetry by the romantic poets, not by the Victorian poets. Don't misunderstand. So Alfred Lord Tennyson is a Victorian poet. So you may think that Alfred Lord Tennyson is actually giving a lot of explanation about this bird, the beauty of the bird. That is true, because when he was giving some kind of explanation, it will naturally come out. But his main intention is not to give the beauty of the bird. The beauty of the bird is not actually taken into consideration here. Don't misunderstand. Alfred Lord Tennyson belonged to the category of Victorian poets. So he saw the bird, right? He saw the bird as something vicious, as something terrible, as something dangerous. Can you understand? So this is what you have to remember. Don't think that Alfred Lord Tennyson is actually trying to show the beauty and the sensation of the bird. That is not going to happen here. That is not going to happen. I hope that you guys can understand. So make sure to remember about these different types of images: visual imagery, auditory imagery, tactile imagery, olfactory imagery, right? So these things you have to remember very carefully. By these things, what happens? We are creating different types of imaginations in our mind. Different types of imaginations in our mind. Okay, my dear students, we have discussed 2 questions. I will move on to the next question. I am going to erase this. Right, let's see what is the next question. Right, and here is a bloody hand to shake. Oh man, here is a goodbye. Right, and here is a bloody hand to shake. And oh man, here is a goodbye. So this poem is actually Farewell to the Barn and Stack and Tree. You know that this is actually written by Alfred Edward Houseman. Right, so the poem is actually written by Alfred Edward Houseman. Right, Alfred Edward Houseman. Right, Alfred Edward Houseman. So he is the person who actually wrote the poem. This is actually taken from his collection of poems called the Shropshire Land. Right, Shropshire Land is the collection of poems. And one of the main things that you have to understand here is that this poem, not only this poem, but also the entire poetry collection, the poem is actually a situation, or else we can say the this is actually a confession. This is actually a confession. This is actually a confession done by the murderer. Done by the murderer, right? His best friend, to his best friend called Terence. This part you have to remember, right? To his best friend called Terence. Right? Terence is his best friend, right? And Terence is the person reference is the person who tells the poem to us, right? So the entire poem can be taken as a confession, right? This part you have to remember, my dear students. Please make sure to note down this one, right? This part you have to remember, right? And the poem can be also identified as, the poem can be also identified as a elegy. What do you mean by elegy? A poem which has a sad ending, right? So you have to remember that one as well. Poem can be identified as an elegy, right? Elegy means a poem with a sad ending. A poem with a sad ending, right? It can be identified as an elegy as well, right? What do you mean by an elegy? An elegy means a sad poem, where the ending of the poem is so sad, right? So the entire poem can be taken as a confession. Right. So these are the basic things that you have to understand here. And let's see the questions that they have asked. I am just giving you a brief introduction to each and every poem. We are discussing the paper, the third question. Name the work in which these lines appear. Name the writer. Who speaks these lines? What is meant by bloody hand? Comment on the feelings of the speaker. Right. So these are the 4 questions that they have asked. As I have explained to you, I have given you a small introduction about the poem and the poet, as well as what are the most important things that you have to remember when it comes to this poem, right? Right. So this poem has a very beautiful rhyming scheme as well. If you pay your attention, this poem is a very powerful poem with a very powerful rhyming scheme of A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, right? So if you can read the poem very carefully, you can see a very good rhyming scheme as well. Okay, my dear students, we will check the answers. I am going to erase this, right? We will check the answers. These are the answers which I have given. Farewell to Barn and Stack and Tree by A. Houseman. That is actually identification of the poem, as you can see here. Name the work in which these lines appear. Name the writer. Then we have the second question. The second question is, who speaks these lines? These lines are actually spoken by a young farmer who has killed his brother, right? This is actually told by young farmer, the young farmer who has killed his brother. So I have given more information about that part, right? What is meant by bloody hands? Hands with lot of blood, which similarly explains that hand that has killed someone or sinned, or else what do you call, hands with full of blood. So here the blood clearly resembles that guilty, right? If you can use the word guilty, that can be also taken as an answer, guilty, right? Bloody hands clearly shows us the guilty feeling. The guilty feeling is actually clearly shown here because previously when he was doing his farming, he used to work really hard with his mother and brother, and lot of sweat can be seen from his hands. But today his identity entirely changed because of this murder. What happened? His identity completely changed. So as a result of that, what happened? He became a murderer, from farmer to murderer. That is what happens. Then what are the feelings? Comment on the feelings of the speaker. Exactly, there we have the guilty feeling, and disappointment can be seen. He is ashamed of the action that done by himself. He is really upset, and he is really upset the action which is actually done by himself. Now definitely he will lose his reputation, right? He used to be a really good farmer, and now he can't actually face his mother because his mother will be waiting until they are returned. But soon after, his mother will get to know that okay, elder brother or younger brother has killed the other one. So his mother will never forgive him. So he has lost his family members. He has lost his profession. He has lost his roots. He has lost his identification. He has lost his name. He has lost his brother. He lost almost everything because of the sudden act done by him. He has lost almost everything because of the sudden act done by him, because of the furious act done by him, right? Because of the provocation, right? We use the word provocation, ikman kope, provocation, right? provocation, sudden provocation. Because of the provocation that he has actually killed his own brother. That is what happened. So this is the answer that you should provide, right? This is the answer that you should provide. So this is actually taken from the poem Farewell to the Barn and Speck Entry by A. House. Very beautiful poem. The poem actually contains with a lot of ambiguity, where until we read the last stanza, we will not get a complete idea, a complete picture about the entire poem. It is like as a detective, we have to read each and every line very carefully. Then only we can get the ideas of the poem. You have to be a detective here, right? You have to take all the evidence one by one. Then only you can realize, okay, this poem is about that. But if you take the other poems, you don't have to do like that. The poem Breakfast is something like that, where as a detective, you have to read one by line, one by one, very careful. Then only you can get the answer. Okay, this poem is about that. At the very beginning of the poem, even we don't feel that this is actually a confession. But when you read little by little with the symbols, with the explanations and the expressions, we will come to a conclusion that this can be identified as a murder. And they are brothers, right? And they really work together because of the word usage of mother. So this poem is that kind of poem with a lot of ambiguous ideas. Ambiguity can be taken as a very powerful technique, right? Until the last moment, the audience doesn't know what is going on. When you read the entire poem, when only you will realize that, okay, this is a story. There is a storyboard, right? So that is why this poem can be identified as a poem which is very difficult to answer. So please make sure to pay your attention to that poem as well. The brief introduction is actually given by me. Okay, my dear students, we are going to the next question. The reaction was immediate. Everyone dived for cover and took shelter on the aisle or behind the seats. This is a very popular quotation, very, very popular quotation in literature. This is actually taken from Lahore Attack by Kumar Sangakkara, Colleen Cowdrey lecture. Colleen Cowdrey lecture. Basically, we have 4 short stories in our syllabus. Most of them are actually short stories. If you take The Lumber by H.H. Munro, and if you take the short story by Nightingale and the Rose by Oscar Wilde, both can be identified as proper short stories with a beautiful plot and all the other techniques. But if you take Lahore Attack by Kumar Sangakkara, it is not actually a short story. It is actually a part of a speech. Here we don't have literary techniques. Basically, here we have narrative techniques because it is a narration, right? Because it is a narration, right? If you take the other what do you call a short story, that is what we call Sonali Dharaniyagala, the story An Extract from Wave, that can be also identified as an extract. Basically, we have 2 extracts. So because of that reason, we are going to name them as prose passages. They are not actually short stories, right? They are actually taken from some kind of a speech or some kind of a novel. So however, this can be also taken as a extract which is actually taken from Colleen Cowdrey lecture delivered by Kumar Sangakkara in 2011. Right, 2009, they faced this incident in Lahore. Almost all the Sri Lankan fans and all the Sri Lankan fans all around the world was actually shocked about from this incident. But most of the players, they survived and nobody died. Luckily, they survived. And this incident created what you call Sangha's mind, some kind of honor and some kind of awe towards the people who live in Sri Lanka, especially near these war zones, and what kind of troubles and tribunals that they had to face each and every day for 30 years, where Sangha had to face that incident only for 30 seconds. So as a result of that, in this speech, Sangha clearly compares the suffocation actually undergone by these Sri Lankans. And as a cricketer, what kind of love and what kind of pride, what kind of admiration he has towards these people, right? So this is what you have to remember if you are getting ready for this short story. This is one of the most powerful and most popular short stories that you can, not a short story, actually a prose passage that you can identify. Language is very simple, diction is very simple, and a lot of comic reliefs are also provided in the story, as I have explained to you. And as a Sri Lankan, we should be actually very much happy about the and we have to admire the speaker as well, because he is one of the members who actually elite members who were actually selected to deliver the Colleen Cowdrey lecture. So as a result of that, he became a very popular character as well, as a very popular personality even today. So name the work in which these lines appear, name the speaker. I'm pretty sure that you can get that answer very easily. What is the situation described here? What is meant by everyone? Comment on the effect created by these lines. So this is a very, very easy question. You can very easily answer this question. We hope that this kind of questions will be there for your examination. I don't think that this is difficult for you, right? This is easy as you like. So let's go for the answers. These are the answers which I have selected. The Lahore attack by Kumar Sangakkara. Then what is the situation described here? So make sure to give that the situation in a nutshell. You don't have to write lengthy paragraphs that they went to Pakistan on this day. They played 2 matches and 2 matches was really suffocating. The first match is on the featherbed. You don't have to explain each and everything. Try to understand the fact here. You don't have to explain each and every fact, right? So what you have to do is that you have to understand the situation. Only 1 mark will be given. So give that elaboration in quiet and plain manner where anybody can understand. Pakistani terrorists start attacking them. So Pakistan terrorists actually attacked the bus when Sri Lankan players actually face the situation, a terrible situation of terrorist attack. Likewise, you can give all the answers. Almost all the answers will be taken, but make sure to write in a much more summarized manner rather than writing 5 to 6 paragraphs. Then they were known as actually members of the Sri Lankan cricket team. And what else? This creates tension, fear, suspense, and anxiety, right? These words are very important, my dear children. At least you have to write one of these words. Try to remember these words because these words are actually essential, right? These words are essential in this type of a question because they expect at least 1 word from you. At least 1 word from you they are expecting. So you can take this is the feeling that they actually experienced, right? This is what you can write. So we have discussed now, up to now we have discussed 4 questions. If you have any problems, you can ask. I have actually forwarded you the paper. You can take a printout and you can write the answers and you can compare your answers with the teacher as well. Right. So do you have any problems? You can ask, or shall we move on to the next part? Please pass me a message. Hurry up. Right. Okay. Right. I'm going to erase this. So we will move on to the next question. Right. Okay, students. This is the next question that you have. It will be a glorious afternoon for racing about over those beautiful sands. How they will enjoy themselves. Right. This is again taken from one of your prescribed short stories. That is Lumber Room by H.H. Munro. I have completed this short story, I guess. This is actually taken from Lumber Room, right? Lumber Room can be identified as one of the best short stories which explains about the generation gap, right? Entire story discusses about the problem of generation gap. This is actually written by H.H. Munro. He is known as Hector Hugo Munro, right? He is known as Hector Hugo Munro. He wrote on the pen name of Saki, right? He wrote on the pen name of Saki. So Hector Hugo Munro did not have a very happy childhood, right? Did not have very happy childhood, right? Because his parents died when he was very young, right? Didn't have very happy childhood. His parents died and he had to live with his tyrannical aunt, right? He had to live with his tyrannical aunt, and most of the explanations are actually taken here in this story is actually reflecting to his aunt, right? This entire short story is actually reflecting about her aunt, right? So the basic theme of the poem is children are much more smarter than adults, right? If you take most of the short stories by this person, right? So your questions, essay type questions will be also based on this one. Children are smarter than adults, right? So here, this can be seen as the major theme. And one of the weaknesses that we have in this short story is that Nicholas is taken as a perfect character without any flaws, right? Nicholas is taken as a perfect character. So we don't have perfect characters in literature, right? At least they may have some kind of a weakness. So Nicholas's character is actually taken as actually a perfect character without any flaws, right? But all the mistakes and all the problems actually into the aunt, and aunt is taken as a character without any good deed, right? That type of characters we cannot be seen when it comes to literature, right? We have gray characters, we have good characters, we have bad characters. But here, right, in order to show that children are much more smart, Nicholas is actually taken as a perfect character without having any flaws. Any weaknesses cannot be seen in Nicholas's character. So that type of characters we cannot see in literature, right? If you take Nicholas's aunt, it is true that Nicholas's aunt can be taken as the enemy, but even the enemies have some kind of good qualities. But this enemy can be taken as an enemy who doesn't what do you call have any kind of good qualities, right? Any positive qualities. So that type of characters are very much rare when it comes to literature. So this clearly shows us the sole motive of H.H. Munro. He actually wanted to show to the entire world that even though some adults are thinking that they know everything, the reality is they don't know anything at all. The reality is they don't know anything at all. There are certain children who can provide them some kind of influence, some kind of education, some kind of awareness can be actually brought by them when it comes to their knowledge. So sometimes adults have to believe. Sometimes adults have to believe, and they have to help these young people in order to overcome their problems. And here, as we can understand, Nicholas's aunt is not providing any support in order to enhance the cognitive abilities of the boy. The boy has a brilliant mind. He's a very good boy with a lot of imaginative skills, but unfortunately, the aunt is not giving any support to enhance or else develop or else to encourage these wonderful skills that he possesses. Not only for Nicholas, but also for the other children as well. So from there, the writer is trying to express the idea that almost all the adults are safe, right? Almost all the adults in this world are very safe, right? But we cannot agree with that fact because of this perfect characterization. So that type of perfect characters cannot be found when it comes to literature. So however, these are the basic things that you have to remember. The major theme, what are the major two characters? By using those two major characters, what kind of moral idea or moral message or what kind of theme is actually the writer is going to touch in his or her short story. These things you have to pay your attention very carefully when you are studying, right? Because your entire study is actually based on these questions. This is how you are going to study, right? Okay, very good. So I'm going to erase this. Let's go for the answers. I hope that you guys have completed this part. Name the work in which these lines appear. Name the writer. Who is the speaker? Who are referred to as they? Comment on the qualities of the speaker. There are a number of qualities that we can discuss. These are the answers which I have taken. This is taken from The Lumber Room by Saki. The aunt or Nicholas's aunt is actually taken here. That is the B part. Nicholas's brother, boy cousin, and the girl cousin, right? So that is they. If you can remember, when Nicholas is actually in disgrace because he put a frog into his bread and milk, aunt wanted to give him some kind of a punishment. But the problem is aunt did not have enough evidence or proper evidence to prove the fact that Nicholas has done that. So aunt is actually motivating Nicholas to do something wrong. Then definitely he can capture Nicholas and she can punish him. Can you understand? That is why aunt is actually motivating Nicholas to go to the lumber room, right? That is why aunt is telling Nicholas not to go to the lumber room, because aunt knew that definitely Nicholas will get some kind of curiosity. As a result of that, definitely Nicholas will go to the lumber room. As soon as he went to the lumber room, aunt can capture him and aunt can give some kind of punishment towards him because aunt has some kind of evidence. So here we can clearly understand that aunt actually engages and enjoys this punishment with withholding happiness. This cannot be identified as something really good, where this H.H. Munro is completely refusing this idea. Can you understand? He completely refusing this idea, saying that children cannot be made, children cannot be taken into the correct path by giving punishments. The only method that you can do is, as an adult, you have to use your brain and you have to educate them. You have to make some kind of awareness within them, and you have to love them, and you have to be with them always. That is the only method. That is the only method. And you have to listen to them, right? Most importantly, you have to listen to them. So according to the aunt, those are the things that you have to do. So if you do those things, what happens here is that definitely the child will come to your path spontaneously rather than taking all these punishments. But aunt is a character who always enjoys the punishments, right? punishments are actually not given to take the children towards the correct path. It gave some kind of enthusiasm and some kind of enjoyment and happiness to the aunt. So as a result of that, she always wanted to punish. But according to H.H. Munro, punishing is not only not the solution. Right. So here, comment on the qualities of the speaker. Speaker is actually the aunt. She is a vicious and cruel character, very authoritative and very insensitive and very stupid character. She's a very stupid character. That part also you can remember. Very stupid character, right? Aunt can be taken as a very stupid character, right? So these are the questions that we have discussed in question number 5. Remember to make sure to remember about that story. If you take Lumber Room by H.H. Munro, the language is very difficult. Please make sure to go through the language because you have number of different types of vocabulary. We have military words, we have biblical allusion, we have number of different types of vocabulary. So please make sure to go through that and make sure to learn the exact word. Make sure to learn the exact word. Definitely that will help you to write the answers, because not like the other, unlike the other 3 short stories, Lumber Room is a very difficult short story because of the language, right? Even though you know the plot, because of the language, there can be a lot of problems, right? We are coming to the 6th question. If you have any problems, you can ask. Okay, it seems that you don't have any questions. Shall we move on? Right. Okay. So we will move on to the next one. Why I don't believe you have even got silver buckles to your shoes as the Chamberlain's nephew has. Name the work which these lines are taken. So the question is not properly given here. We take that part here. Right. Name the work in which these lines taken, name the writer, who is the speaker, what is the context, what are the attitudes of the speaker towards you, right? So it is actually taken from, as you know, another short story that we have, The Nightingale and the Rose by Oscar Wilde. This also belongs to the category of Victorian era. As I have told you, Victorian period can be identified as 1832, 1901. This is the Victorian era, right? So in the Victorian era, what happened was actually as a result of the Victorian era, the Restoration period, because of the Restoration period, what happens, this industrialization occurred at that time period. This is one of the most important things that you have to remember. Because of the industrialization, what happened, actually people suffocated, right? People suffocated, and lot of snobbish values were considered, right? A lot of snobbish values were considered, right? People thought that, okay, wearing good clothes and doing a good job and behaving and speaking a very good language is actually a gentlemanship, right? Through that we can identify the gentlemen, but that is not the truth, right? So Oscar Wilde did not like this philosophy of utilitarianism. If you are getting ready, utilitarianism, right? This is utilitarianism. What do you mean by that? They believed the most utilized things are more valuable than other things. So as a result of that, what happened? This is what we call utilitarianism. What do you mean by utilitarianism theory? They believe that most utilized things are more valuable than the other things. As a result of that, what happened? As a result of that, they did not pay attention towards human feelings and arts, because they can't generate money. But Oscar Wilde believed in aestheticism, right? Aestheticism. So Oscar Wilde believed in aestheticism, which explained real happiness and value can be gained from arts and humanities, right? That is what he believed, right? So it can be identified as a conflict between utilitarianism and humanism. Sorry, aestheticism. Can you understand? This can be identified as, if you pay your attention, it is actually a conflict between aestheticism and utilitarianism, right? So utilitarianism is actually very popular at that time period, but Oscar Wilde did not pay attention towards aestheticism. අපි මේකට සිංහලෙන් කියනවා ළමයි මේ උපයෝගීතාවාදය. ඒ කියන්නේ වික්ටෝරියානු සමාජයේ ඒ කාලේ වැඩිපුරම ප්‍රයෝජනයට ගත හැකි දේ තමයි ඒගොල්ලෝ වැඩිපුරම වටිනා දේ විදිහට සැලකුවේ. ඒකට අපි යුරෝපා සමාජයේ කියනවා මේ අපි කතා කරන්නේ ඉන්ඩස්ට්‍රියල් රෙවොලූෂන්. ඒ කියන්නේ කාර්මික විප්ලවය වෙන දවස්වල තමයි මේ අපි කතා කරන්නේ. මේ කාලේ සමාජය හිතුවා වැඩිපුරම ප්‍රයෝජනයට ගන්න පුළුවන් දේ තමයි වැඩිපුරම වටින දේ. එතකොට ඒගොල්ලන් ඒකට අපි කියනවා උපයෝගීතාවාද. වැඩිපුරම උපයෝජනය කළ හැකි දේ තමයි වැඩිපුරම වටින දේ කියලා තමයි ඒගොල්ලෝ හිතුවේ. එතකොට කලාව, සංස්කෘතිය, දේශපාලන විද්‍යාව, චිත්‍ර කලාව, සාහිත්‍ය වගේ දේවල් වලින් ප්‍රයෝජනයක් ගන්න බෑ. ඒ වලින් මුදල් හම්බ කරන්න බෑ. You can't earn money from them. Can you understand? So as a result of that, they did not pay attention towards them. Even the education is not actually based on them. If you take the boy in this short story, the boy is actually learning philosophy, right? He doesn't learn about literature or anything like that, but unfortunately that education has not provided proper mentality, proper personality for him to face this kind of problems. As a result of that, he cries when the girl said that when he didn't find a red rose. What happens here? He is not bothered to find a red rose. He is crying, which clearly shows that the education system has not created people, right, in order to face the social problems. They have actually made robots, right? They have actually made robots, right? Not real people, right? So the boy is not ready to face challenges because of his education. He is not actually enjoyed his education. This is what we can see in the Victorian society, right? So this is something very important. This background is very important because entire short story discusses about the Victorian society, Victorian era, right? So whatever the economic development actually occurred in the Victorian era, on the other hand, a huge what do you call decline can be seen when it comes to these humanities and social sciences, right? The what do you call the pollution, environmental pollution, children were neglected, children were ill-treated, and prostitution was very famous at that time period. And most of the people, they did not have jobs because of the industrialization. A lot of machineries were introduced. As a result of that, most of the people, they were jobless, right? If you have read shorts, if you have how many of you have read this what do you call novels of Charles Dickens? Can you remember some of the novels from Charles Dickens, very famous ones? How many of you have read Oliver Twist, right? Hard Times, Great Expectations, right? If you have read these novels, right, you can clearly understand the condition of children. If you take Oliver Twist, how they treat Oliver, right? How they sold Oliver, right? This kind of society can be identified when it comes to Victorian era. If you take Great Expectations, Pip's character, how he was sold, how he was neglected, how he was ill-treated, right? Pip's character. So you can see the Victorian era. So if you take this short story, right, Nightingale and the Rose by Oscar Wilde, the most powerful thing that you have to remember, my dear students, the Victorian era. You have to remember the Victorian era, what kind of suffocation that people undergone at that time period. Even though the country was economically developed, the country was declined when it comes to human values and social values. This is what we call the battle between utilitarianism and aestheticism, where the utilitarianism actually was not enjoyed by people like Oscar Wilde. They always believe that no, a society will be reformed through aestheticism, not by utilitarianism, right? So people should learn art, people should learn about literature, drama, arts, right? All these things they should learn. Then only they can be a complete human being. Otherwise, the entire society will be wasted, right? That is what he believes. So this entire short story, if you are trying to write answers for this short story, that is Nightingale and the Rose by Oscar Wilde, please make sure to remember that these facts are essential. Without these facts, you can't do anything at all. These facts are essential. So please make sure to write down them. Hurry up and pass me a message if you have finished. Right. These are the answers that we have taken for the question. This is actually told by the Nightingale, and this is actually taken from the short story called The Nightingale and the Rose by Oscar Wilde. The professor's daughter is actually said this when the boy is actually coming with the red rose, the girl vehemently refuses him, saying that I don't believe you have even got silver buckles to your shoes, which shows that the materialistic love that the girl possessed at that time period, not only this girl but the entire society, right? Entire Victorian society is going behind utilitarianism. At that time period, silver is taken as something very much important where people can utilize and people can earn profits. So as a result of that, that is why the girl says silver buckles, more than your red rose, more than your pure blood of this nightingale. The nightingale has sacrificed its pure love, pure blood in order to make this rose a red color, because the nightingale thought that the boy is a real lover, right? Which means that the aestheticism, right? In order to make the rose red color, in order to secure a real love, the nightingale sacrificed its life, saying that when we compare real love and my life, real love is much more valuable than my life. So I am ready to give up my life. So that kind of sacrifice is actually wasted. At the end of the day, the boy threw the red rose to the gutter and the cartwheel went over it. So it clearly shows that what kind of place is given in the Victorian society to real love. Can you understand what kind of place is given in the Victorian society to the real love? That is what they have shown. Why I don't believe you, you have got silver buckles to your shoes as the Chamberlain's nephew has. What is the context? I have explained you the context, but you have to write in a nutshell. I have given that here. This is the occasion that the professor's daughter rejects the young student, right? That is much more enough. It's better that you can elaborate, but you don't have to write 2 to 3 paragraphs, right? 2 all our lines are more than enough. Then we have what are the attitudes of the speaker towards you, right? The attitudes are actually inferior, humiliating, sarcastic, and disdainful, right? Very much humiliating because the boy did not have a lot of money. So as a result of that, the entire part can be taken as a very much inferior, humiliating attitude. So hurry up and finish that part. We have completed all the 6 questions. Now we are moving to the second paper to discuss target questions. Those are essay type questions. Hurry up and start. Finish this. Okay, students, let's go to the essay type question. Right, sorry. We have a question from Vendor of Sweets. This is the novel. Right, so we will read the question and we will try to answer this one as well. Read the following passage and answer the questions given below it. When his staff was gone, he put away his scripture book and pulled out his table drawer, which has padded with the folded towel in order to muffle the sound of the coin being emptied from the bronze jug. His fingers quickly sorted out the denominations, the fives, tens, and the quarters with the flourish of the virtues, or running his fingers over a keyboard. His eyes swept the collection at a glance and arrived at the final count within 15 minutes. He made an entry in a small notebook and then more elaborate entries in a ledger which could be inspected by anyone. This is actually taken from Vendor of Sweets by R.K. Narayan. It is a very first or second passage, if I am not mistaken. I think it is from first or second paragraph, where it clearly shows us the Jagan's attitude towards money. If you can remember, we have discussed about that. So Jagan's attitude towards money, he is a very much money-centered man. So this is what actually it has explained. So let's go through the questions and try to identify what are the questions that they have asked. Who is he and what is he doing in this moment? Why is his table drawer padded with a folded towel? Explain the following phrases using your own words. Muffle, elaborate entries. What qualities of the speaker are revealed through his behavior? Definitely his money-centered attitude is actually discussed here. He is a person who is so much money-centered, where he did not like to hear, he did not he did not give even chance to hear to the other people who work in the shop the sound of the coins. That is why he has used the towel there, because when he is putting all the coins from the jug to the drawer, from the sound effect, the others can realize that he has collected a lot of money. Can you understand that? So he wanted to avoid that. So as a result of that, he put actually a towel, so the sound will not come. So the other people cannot get some kind of an idea what kind of money that he has collected, but what amount of money, right? Okay, right. So let's go for the answers. I am going to erase this, right? So what are the answers which I have taken? So we will stop from there. Next week we can discuss the target questions, say type questions. Please make sure to take the printout of the paper. The vendor of sweets, obviously yes, right? Who is he and what is he doing at this moment? Actually, he Jagan counting his daily income here. That is what we can see. Then second one, why is his table drawer padded with a folded towel? Because it will create less sound when he pours money into the drawer. As I have explained to you, he did not want others to hear that sound. He did not want others to hear that sound. That is what we can see here. Muffle means the meaning less or quiet sound. Elaborate entries means detailed reports. So as I have explained to you, he's a money-minded character. He's tactful. He was miserly, right? So these are the things that we have discussed. So next week, we are going to discuss about the other target questions. We are going to start from poetry. These are the questions that we hope to discuss. A bird came down the walk, the clown's wife, and the terrorist is watching as well as the huntsman, right? So thank you so much for joining. I'm really sorry for the inconvenience. Sometimes this electricity problem may occur. Obviously, you will get a recording, or else we will start the class after 10 or 20 minutes. I will definitely send you the recording. So please make sure to go through the recording. Please take a printout of the paper. Try to write answers by yourselves. Then only you will improve, right? You can look into the mirror, you can look into the screen, and you can write down all my answers, but that is not going to work. Believe me, that is not going to work. The more you write, the more you will encourage, the more you will train, the more you can manage the time. So please make sure to do that. Then you can do your work, right? Okay. Everyone, sir, na yenang hamoto api labada satiya hambe.